Hello, my first recollection of the occupation is in fact my sister, who's a few years older than me, coming running into the house screaming, and my mother was very upset. She'd been on the beach down at Havre de Pars and the Germans had flown over machine gunning and dropping bombs, and she wasn't hurt when she got home. Of course that was the start. And then the following day I helped my mother hang out white flags from the window and pillowcases, actually. That was what we were all ordered to do, to show that we were non-hostile to the Germans.
Oh, NORMA. Oh, well, I was 9 when the occupation started.
Yeah.
And I went to Brighton Road School, which is now the old fire station when the old police headquarters are there now.
Yeah.
And so it was only just up the road from where I lived, so it was really, really far from the occupation.
Sorry. Oh, look at that. That's okay.
Go to Doris. Your turn, Doris.
That's all right.
I went to Elker Place School. I was 9 when the occupation started.
Yeah.
And I went out, and the teacher there was so good. We used to go down to the bakery and get hot water for us to drink and to keep warm. And then she got us some blankets, which were lovely. But seeing her late after the war and everything, she told us where she got them from, and it was from Mr. Croat, the undertaker. We didn't mind. It kept us warm.
Of course, your situation was very different to mine, wasn't it?
My father was born in England, and the Germans decided that all the English men had to be sent to Germany. So my mother and my father, and they had 24 hours notice to get ready and take their 2 young daughters off to Germany, which was quite traumatic for my mother particularly. And we were there with my mother. My father was in a separate camp, and my sister, and the 3 of us lived there for 2 years and 9 months. It was very hard. We were 3 to a bed, which were hard wooden bunk beds with straw mattresses.
Well, Mark, I better tell you all about this little bits I know. We lived near Millard's Corner, and I remember the Germans building the bunker across the slip. And I was too young for school, so I went everywhere with Mum. There was no transport, so we walked everywhere. We called at the farms in Rue de Prey and Longville to see if they had any groceries, vegetables, etc. to sell. Our shoes wore out very quickly, and my dad had an old bicycle tyre, so he used to cut out a piece of rubber to mend our shoes. We had some allotments provided for us when things were getting quite bad in the FB football fields where the running track is now, and we used to grow veg and things. And then one summer evening we stopped to watch the Germans playing football, and there was a young German soldier standing alongside me, and he tried to offer me a sweet, and I wouldn't take a sweet from a German. A poor man, he must have been upset. And probably because of all the talk that the grown-ups spoke about during tea times and things.
When the Germans did come over, the first bombing, I was in the Forum cinema watching The Wizard of Oz with my brothers, with Dick and Bob. And we were in there from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock of the night. They wouldn't let us out.
Wow.
And so we just carried on as we were going. And
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
And then it came that we had the Cross parcels,
okay,
and which saved us a lot.
yeah, yeah,
And that's it.
I had an
Yeah.
older brother,
yeah,
and he was very good. He wasn't much older. I think he was about 15.
yeah,
But he got himself a part-time job working for Reese, the bake.
yeah,
So every now and again he would bring us home a £1 loaf, which
okay,
was like gold, really.
yeah,
And then also he used to go down and help at Beggar's. There was a shoe shop where you had to queue to have your shoes repaired.
yeah,
So he used to, I presume, look after the queue and sign them in or something.
sure,
So he was really a big help to my mother. For all of us. So very good.
My recollection of the liberation was in fact in the Royal Square when we all crowded into the Royal Square. I was there by the Pearson Hotel listening to the bailiff. That was actually on May the 8th, saying that Churchill had sent a message saying that our dear Channel Islands were free, and then we all cheered. But I have one little story of actually the latter part of the occupation. My main memory of most of the things in the occupation was that I was hungry, and I was walking up the middle of Stopford Road, and I heard this voice shout at me, "Halt!" which frightened me, and I turned round. There's a German soldier standing out the door of what was then the Breeze Royal Hotel, and he said, "Kommen Sie." So I went and stood by him, and he disappeared into the hotel, and he came back out very quickly, and he had half a loaf in his hand, and he handed me the half a loaf of bread. And I must say I still feel a bit guilty about it, because I didn't say anything at all. I just snatched it out of his hand, and I raced off home so that I could give it to my mother. But that was the good side of the Germans in that respect.
Well, Dad grew peas and beans. I don't know about potatoes. No, I don't think we had them earlier, not
Yeah.
potatoes. But yes, he grew quite a bit.
yeah,
Plus tobacco. Tea made of geranium leaves and stuff.
okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't drink that sort of stuff, so I didn't have to go through that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you say that you saw an orange for the first time, or when
Yes, after the war.
Yeah.
As soon as they came in, Mum was sure to go and get something like that for us.
Yeah.
Or bananas.
Sure,
Because my middle sister, Ellen, she was 5 years older than me, so she had seen those things and
yeah,
Fry's chocolates and stuff.
yeah,
Like Mr. Fry's little boy's chocolates, wasn't it? Or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I hadn't seen chocolate, didn't know what that was all about.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Mum went to. She used to save some sugar if she had some,
mm.
and go to the confectioner, Mr. Blompier, I think.
okay,
And I was at Langley Park I lived, and we had the anti-aircraft gun at the top of the road,
Okay.
went halfway down the road.
yeah,
When the British came over to bomb France, to get into France, then they used to shake the house. That
Wow.
was terrible.
yeah. That must have been
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, really awful.
Yeah,
And then we had the Germans coming around when they were practicing,
yeah.
running through all the gardens and everything.
Gosh,
But they didn't bother you or anything
Yeah.
like.
We had the German, the Todd organisation, who lived just in the next road up Midvale Road at what was the Portland Hotel.
yeah,
And we used to see them going up and down the road. But they never really bothered us.
okay,
Probably they looked at us and thought of their own children at home.
yeah, yeah,
But apart from that,
yeah,
And of course, going back to school when we had the no paper and pencils and stuff, we had to use the paper one day and rub it out and use it the next day.
yeah,
So that's how we learned, really.
mm. Yeah,
Sugar beet,
yeah,
and then there was carrot tea and sugar beet and parsnip coffee.
yeah,
Oh, it was revolting, but there again we drank it.
Yeah.
no option really.
no option. No.
Yeah. You didn't complain. That was.
No,
Yeah.
nobody to complain to.
Yeah.
Oh, our rations were very poor, really, you know. We had about an ounce of butter a week, and jam was all rationed and everything.
Okay.
And then, of course, it was all of us. We were getting sugar. My mother, we had a nice garden, you know.
Yeah.
We grew fruit in there.
Yeah.
So my mother used to make jam and that, so we put it away. But once that went, we had the, well, it was revolting, some of it, really.
Yeah.
But you ate it,
Yeah.
because you had nothing else.
Mm. Wow.
And that
Yeah.
was, yeah. And then, of course, our Red Cross parcels, that's what really saved us in the end. Oh, they saved us.
Yeah.
Down Patriotic Street in Maitland's thing, where the car park is now.
Yeah.
Patriotic Street car park.
Oh, well.
That's where we used to go and collect them. You know? And that's, but, yeah.
My sister-in-law's father was up at St Saviour's Church with Canon Toby,
Okay.
and of course he used to print all these things and go down on his bike all the way down here, throwing these leaflets out.
Yeah.
And of course he got stopped, so my sister-in-law's father was yanked away. She never saw him again.
Of course, they took them
Yeah.
away, eh?
Never saw them again.
There was Mr. Tierney. They found the radio up in the vaults at St Saviour's Church,
Right.
you know. Mr. Tierney, Mr. Nicole. And that, because where we were living in Langley Park, our house gave out onto the rectory, where it was, well, it's the old rectory now, but the rectory, you know, so we saw all the goings on there when they were going all through there looking for stuff.
Yeah. During occupation and
Well, I don't remember anything from myself because I was too young, but of course I do remember all the stories that my parents told me and were forever talking about them,
yeah.
the things that they did and got away with. And so we lived in St Wan's,
Okay.
and way back in the sticks. And it was a very, very quiet road, but the road was used to march Russian soldiers from St Wan's, St George's at St Wan's, to St Peter's Valley, to where they had to chip away at the rock face to create the tunnels.
Yeah.
And so that did... you know, people would sometimes occasionally break off from the line when they were being marched,
Yeah.
and they were just literally skin and bone. They had a piece of bread and water, and that's all they had. And one day, one of the chappies managed to break loose and found himself in our backyard. Well, our wash house was in the backyard, and my mother was just preparing to do her laundry, and she'd put the faggots underneath the copper, and she'd put the sheets in the copper, and this chappie just appeared, and she was quite surprised, concerned, worried, but when she saw the state the poor chap was in, she knew he needed food.
Yeah.
So she fed him, she gave him food. Apparently they went without food that night because, you know, but his need was greater than theirs. And then one of the neighbours called out to her and said that they were coming up the road, meaning the Germans. And so she didn't know what to do momentarily, and then she decided that she would empty the copper, and she made signs for him to get into the copper. And she put the sheets over the top of it, and then knelt down and pretended to be lighting the faggots under the copper. So the stormtrooper just looked at her, stood in the yard watching her for a few seconds, and then he just grumbled and turned round and off he went.
Yeah.
And so, thank the Lord, that was one thing that she wasn't discovered doing, you know.
And it must have been very difficult for your parents.
Oh, it was. It
Yeah.
was terrible. Terrible.
Did you ever have any close calls with the Germans?
Not really.
Only the ones we did when we had the light on in the kitchen. And they came knocking at the door because they used to walk up and down Langley Park with the iron badges on them and what have you, you know. Guest abodes they were. And knocking at the door, your light is showing. And my mother said, oh, yeah. My father was there. And come in, we come in. So they came in. And as it happens, my young brother was there. And they said, my mother said, well, he must have put it on, you know. No, Reacher, they said, you know.
Yeah.
So they made him stand on the stool. We always had a stool there. And he just could reach it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he said, next time you go to Germany, next time that happens, you go to... And not only that, we had what's the name up on crystal set
Yeah.
up on the landing that my brother had fitted up.
Yeah.
And the wire went to the tap in the bathroom, you know, because you had to have it early.
Yeah.
And of course we used to put the earphones
Yeah.
on and scrape the
Wow.
crystal, you know, and get a bit of news out of it, you know.
Wow.
It was hard.
Yeah.
Of course, my dad, he used to make crystal radios. And he was very, very well known in the 3 western parishes because he was a baker. And of course he knew all the houses and all the farmhouses and that. And so he made crystal radios, and I think virtually every farmhouse in St. Mons had one of his radios. And one particular day, it was his last radio he had made because they had to have 2 earphones.
Yeah.
And he only had one, and he was showing them how to use the radio with the one earphone. And the kitchen door just flung open, and it was a stormtrooper. And he just said not to worry, not to be afraid, because he wanted to listen to the radio.
Right.
And he said that it was important for him to be able to hear the BBC News because all they heard was propaganda. So they didn't know what state Germany was in, and he really didn't know anything about their own country.
Yeah.
And then he pulled out a photograph from his pocket with tears in his eyes. And here I go. And then he said that was his wife and his 2 daughters, and he didn't know, he had no idea whether they were alive or dead, because where they actually lived, they had taken quite a bombing from the British. And so he asked if they would permit him, this is a German soldier asking if he would be permitted to go as often as he could, virtually every evening, to listen to the BBC News at 6 o'clock. And he asked why there was only one earphone, and my father said because he didn't have any more, he couldn't get any more, and so that would be the last radio. And about a week later, the farmer was in his outhouses and saw this brown paper parcel tied up with string. Wondered what on earth that was. So he unwrapped it, and there was several headsets. And of course nobody knew where they came from. Nobody knew how they got there. Up in their bedroom, this is obviously after the liberation, I don't know, I must have been playing hide and seek or something with
Yeah.
a friend, and I was under their bed,
Mm.
and I found a loose floorboard,
Oh, wow.
and I thought, wonder why that's loose.
Mm.
And being a child, inquisitive, I discovered that the floorboard had come up,
Yeah.
and when I asked my father, he told me that was his hiding place for his
Right.
papers and
Yeah.
precious things, his little camera,
Yeah.
which I have here,
Yeah.
which I'll show you. That was his camera.
Wow. Look at that.
Look at that.
Yeah. Amazing.
And that took photographs of 1.5 inch square.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. And then, of course, going into the square and seeing all the sailors and all that coming up after signing the treaty,
Yeah.
you know, coming through that was wonderful.
Mm.
Everywhere was packed. Everybody, I don't know where you came from,
Yeah.
sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
All the Conway Street and everywhere, you know.
Sure.
And that's,
And then, oh yes, on Liberation Day, this is my mother this time. On Liberation Day, I don't know how they managed to get from St Wands to the harbour, but they were there apparently very early in the morning, and they were there all day. But she just got, because there was hundreds and hundreds of people there, nobody could see anything,
Yeah.
you know, because they were just like sardines in a tin. So she decided, she saw her opportunity and decided she'd climb one of the cranes.
Okay. Oh.
And she climbed the crane with me under her arm. And she could see above the heads of everybody else. And then she could see when the ship actually brought the Tommies in.
Yeah. Yeah.
As they left Elizabeth Castle and came into the harbour. She could see all that.
Sure.
And of course my father was going bananas
Yeah.
because she's hanging on to me
Yeah.
and with one arm and hanging on to the crane with the other, and
Yeah.
he's, you know, screaming to her to come down, and she just took no notice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said she was just so excited of the whole thing of actually being liberated
Yeah.
that, you know, lots of people were just out of their minds with excitement, and Dad's said she'd just gone completely mad.
Yeah. Remember much of Liberation Day itself? Or?
Yes, not every detail though. I remember it was crowded down there.
Yeah.
And everybody was so excited. I wasn't, but
Yeah.
it didn't. At 6 years old, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't really quite understand
Sure.
the
Yeah.
hardness of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, so, and I think I said, I remembered, excuse me, I saw the landing craft was on the beach.
Yeah.
And that vivid in my mind. I saw the long line of soldiers, German
Yeah.
soldiers, inching their way onto the landing craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's vivid in my head.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
But yes, and I remember the big drone of aeroplanes going over to France. It must have been the last time they did it, you know.
Yeah.
The trip, yeah. I think when all the parachutes dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could hear that going over
Sure.
in the evening. Yeah.
Your liberation was very different, wasn't it?
Liberation was very different, yes. The French
The French.
liberated us. That I don't even remember much of. We got back and we found white sheets on our beds, which we had great difficulty
Yeah.
in understanding,
Yes.
really,
Yes. Yes.
because we had been on straw mattresses.
Yes. Yes.
We went to the UK and stayed with my father's father for many months before returning to Jersey.
Long time ago now.
Yes.